To do HSC is a very unique experience.
Difficult.
Confusing.
Scary.
Stressed.
Intimidating.
Difficult.
Intense.
Surprising.
Long.
Scary.
Doing my HSC was difficult at times and also easier at times than I thought it would be. It definitely wasn't the experience that I had anticipated going into Year 12, especially with everything that changed in 2020.
I think there's a lot of pressure and you kind of feel like you want to impress people with your marks, but at the end of the day you kind of just go along with it and try your best.
It's very tailored sort of to how your mindset is going to work through that year, and that is going to dedicate your outcome, really, is your attitude towards it.
The HSC was surprising. The trials helped out a lot to get through the actual HSC.
I was struggling a lot with the HSC, I think, because I wasn't, like, we were told like what to expect of it, but I think I severely overestimated it, and that kind of put my expectations off track.
I found the HSC to be very long. It's just a long process that seemed to keep going over and over with just continued stress and anxiety.
After you do it, it's not actually as scary as you think it is. It feels like it's the last opportunity you have to prove yourself.
HSC is really intense because you go from, you know, kind of diddle-daddling a little bit in Year 10 and 11, and then it's like, bam, like you're taking this completely seriously. And I think a lot of us were a bit off guard, especially with COVID and stuff like that.
Well, I had no idea what to expect in the HSC, so I came into it knowing it would be a lot of work.
A lot of the things we did was out of our depth and we didn't really know what was going on half the time. But we pulled through, so in the end it was still good, yeah.
I was excited to do art in the HSC. Like before I'd loved art, but I had no sense of direction, no style. And so I actually really enjoyed having the guidance of the teacher and my peers, and like being forced to continue with this one big project. It kind of helped me see that I had more potential than I thought and see what I could achieve.
It allows for expression, something that I feel is important to me because without it, I can't be who I am.
I did enjoy doing my major work quite a lot, but because I kind of procrastinated a lot, as most students do, the process became very tiring and tedious.
It was something that we could create anything that we wanted, so we kind of had like the freedom for exploration and what we love to do. And I felt like it was to the point where there was like kind of like no limit.
Art for me has always been a bit of a getaway, like it's my subject to just chill, and it was like that still in Year 12 for me.
Doing art as my HSE was actually enjoyable even with the pressure, as it really encouraged me to actually do big projects, which I love.
It was actually really freeing to be able to, like, I think it was 5 classes a week or something, where you just come in and like it wasn't really theory based. I could just focus on something that I actually really enjoyed.
I like to do art as a way of like expressing how I feel, and being free to do that gets challenged when you're forced to slightly conform to like rules and guidelines a bit, especially in the HSC.
Unbelievable.
Shock.
Unexpected.
Shocked.
Relief.
What's going to happen?
Unpredictable.
Thank goodness.
Confusion.
Yikes.
COVID was just so out of the blue that when it happened, everyone was a bit like, what do we do? Like, this is something that's never happened before, and everyone's really scared and skeptical.
When COVID-19 was first announced, it felt like a completely different world and it was unreal.
When the COVID closures first happened, I was sort of excited because I knew what it meant for my major work. It meant that I'd have more time to work on it at home, and that especially because my work was so large, I wouldn't have to be taking things back and forth.
I prefer to do things alone. I'm a very antisocial person, so the minute COVID happened, I was kind of like, are we going to be isolated in quarantine? Is this my chance to finally be alone and away from school? It was like a huge relief for me, not being social, yeah.
My thought when schools went into lockdown was like really thankful, because at that time I wasn't doing so well with my mental health. So having that kind of break really helped me a lot.
It's kind of like, oh, we're going online now.
I found COVID originally to be very confusing because I wasn't sure, because there was a lot of ifs and buts whether we would go into lockdown, and then when it did happen, how long, how restricted, and then even when we came back, it was still unsure whether we would be back permanently.
I kind of felt like everything was falling apart. I had no idea what to expect for the year ahead of me. I didn't know what the outcome of COVID was going to be, how much it was going to affect us, if the HC was even happening at all. So I was just kind of pretty shocked, and I lost some of my motivation to do my work because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Working from home was both a positive and a negative experience. Positive being I was able to get through work at my own pace, pretty much. Negative being there was too many distractions.
It's really ironic because it was really pressuring because we didn't know what we were doing, and it was the biggest year of our high school, but at the same time it was really laid back because a lot of it was online.
At least it was, you were in like your home, so it could be kind of come like comfortable, like you could work from your bed.
Working from home was good because I was able to work when I wanted, and I was able to do long hours on my artwork, and I didn't have to worry about anything else.
Your room was also school, but your room is also where you want to rest. So it's kind of like everything's just mushed into one, and it's just so like you're kind of confused whether I should be resting or I should be studying.
All shifted into one blurry memory for me. Like, time didn't feel normal. I would try to go for walks or even just sit outside for a bit just to get away from being at my desk in my room all day, every day.
I found working at home to be kind of lonely.
My brain kind of was like, this is an excuse for a holiday. So my sleep schedule flipped, and just being able to like get on top of everything sort of changed, and just that whole organized sense, like, because when you're in school it's organized, you've got a school bell, you've got periods for classes, but at home it's just completely gone. So I was struggling to find my way a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes, I miss being at school.
Yes.
Yeah.
During the closures, I missed feeling like I was going out into the world every day, but I also didn't miss the amount of traveling that I had to do to get to school.
I missed being with my friends and, you know, being in the classroom. I miss my teachers, but I also got a bit bored of, you know, being in my bedroom, and, you know, that used to be a place where I could relax, but because every morning I was getting up and doing classes at my desk at home, that sort of relaxing space was ruined in a way.
The experience of remote learning was a paradox in that I managed my time much more effectively, but I also found it easier to switch off during class, so I lost time as well.
It's just you by yourself at your desk studying, and you can't see the people around you studying, and you're not with anyone. So yeah, you really had to find that motivation.
My experience with remote learning was, I guess, difficult. I was basically using my laptop and the Teams provided by the school for lessons and stuff.
It was pretty difficult. It was hard to understand sort of why this was happening, in a sense, like why did we have to be at home.
Working remotely, I would use an app called Forest, which helped me a lot trying to stay on task.
Remote learn, I really had to push myself to do it because I don't have great motivation, especially, like I had better motivation going into year 12 because I was doing subjects I wanted to do, but when you're by yourself in your room, not with other mates and stuff like that, it definitely impacted the way I worked.
I wasn't, able to, I guess, collaborate as much.
Like as the months went by, or as the weeks go by, I had no motivation at the end to do any of the studying at home remotely, and so it was just kind of like I was kind of like a robot at that point. Studying in a global pandemic was so odd, but kind of stressful at the same time. Yeah.
I would have never guessed that it would have happened, and just shifting like the way that we learn so that we have no contact with another person for weeks at a time. It was difficult, hard to get through, yeah.
You wanted to focus on school, but there was so much going on around us, and it felt kind of silly to just try in the HSC when there were like people getting really sick in other parts of the world, and you had to kind of make sure you were remembering like priorities.
Very shocking. It was sort of, no one really knew what was going to happen. So it was very uneasy. You never knew if you were going to be at school or online, so.
Definitely nothing I expected. For me, being at school physically definitely helps the way I learn, so I found it really difficult being at home.
Challenging. The interactions between people at school was kind of like the norm up until that time, working from home. So losing the connections with friends, teachers, etc., that kind of put a halt to like learning.
Something I love, being alone, but to suddenly have that cut off, it was like so sudden and like such a sudden change that I was like almost not prepared for it as well.
Everyone was kind of falling behind. It was really stressful, but working together as a cohort brought us closer.
Experiencing a global pandemic while studying was almost a paradox, as it felt like study mattered so much more but also so much less in the context of the world.
The impact on COVID on my studies was both positive and negative. Positive being I was able to get through a lot more work at like my own kind of rate, but negative being that it was harder to communicate with teachers, to ask questions and then having to wait for a response to come back.
Getting communication between teachers was really difficult when studying.
The COVID closures impacted on my studies in that I was able to spend all of the travelling time actually working, so I found that quite helpful.
It didn't really impact any theoretical subjects because, as I said, you still had your books, you still had paper and everything like that. You could still do practice essays. But it definitely did for a time impact like art because I couldn't go out and shoot anything.
It impacted especially for art because you can't have the physical attention from the teacher.
I found it really hard to focus because we had so much more freedom to do whatever work we wanted whenever we wanted. And I enjoyed how at school we had the strict periods to stick to one subject, and so having that freedom, like I couldn't quite handle it. Like it was too much responsibility for me.
The lockdown caused me to be able to create a new study schedule for myself that wasn't based on what anyone else was doing.
I had no sort of sense of time and my whole schedule was flipped.
In terms of my learning, I definitely could have done better if it was in quarantine, but my grades didn't suffer too much, so I'm happy.
My school supported me. I think we had a lot of great support from Willoughby. We were constantly checked in by our teachers. We had teacher mentors.
Trying to implement things that made it easier on students, even during the day, so that most people's mental health could stay in a good state.
I guess the teachers really tried their best to support us in giving us as much direction as possible, but it was nice that we were kind of learning together because we all went into lockdown together. It was new for everyone.
I think the school was very supportive through the teachers and how they communicated with you, always checking in, making sure we knew that if we needed help with anything that we could always email them or ask them on the group chat in our class.
For me, each teacher kind of had their own system, but they all tried really hard so that we could contact them individually and get feedback for where we're at.
My school supported me very well. The counsellors were always an email away pretty much, and they would respond to you quite quickly.
As our school is so small, they were really able to support us individually more, and I could organise individual lessons with teachers at the click of a finger. It was really easy to get extra support.
I think the school was able to support us pretty well, especially during the pandemic when, they were reaching out about mental well-being and stuff like that. And especially when we had to come back for some of our classes, I was struggling personally because I was so used to being at home and it was becoming overwhelming. So they helped me out with transitioning from home back to school.
I think we had a very good relationship with them and it made it way easier. Like, you weren't just going to your teacher for help, you were going to your friend to help you. So
I think my teachers are absolutely fantastic, and I really built a relationship that was more than a teacher, it was more like a friendship.
I thought they all tried really hard to support us, and they understood that what we were going through was difficult, and they cared about us.
I really liked my teachers. They were really supportive throughout the whole major work process. They obviously had their ideas about what they wanted my project to be, and I had my ideas, and we always tried to meet somewhere in the middle, and that was usually where the best outcome was.
You can just ask them something and you won't be scared of them. You can just ask them directly and just be, yourself, and you don't have to be shaking and worried about what they're gonna respond to you.
I felt so much support from them, especially in this difficult time, but all through senior years, 11 and 12, it was just amazing how easily I could trust them and come to them.
Oh, they're great. They were really supportive all the way through.
Yeah, they just really wanted the best for us. And in year 12, they kind of become your friends, not your teachers. So, well, both.
They were very supportive, and I think they were very understanding because they were also going through a similar experience to us. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a bit of a learning curve for everyone, and that helped us to understand the struggles everyone was going through.
Time, oh my gosh, it went by actually really, really quickly, but in those small pockets of time at home when you're just sitting there doing nothing, it was extremely slow.
during COVID-19, time was sort of not really there. Sort of you woke up and you went to class and then you went to sleep and you did it all again. And
Time sort of slowed down for me, which I think was a real positive thing because especially with the completion of an art major work, it's very time sensitive and you're under a lot of pressure.
I did notice how fast it went. I would be working, I thought it was the morning, and then I checked the time and it's already 5 p.m. It was all very blurry for me.
The sense of time was just so everything just felt like it was so long.
Time and COVID for me just didn't exist. I would wake up, sit at my desk, and then go to bed.
I was waking up to classes online and then I'd fall back asleep, and the next thing I knew it was 3 a.m. and I was like, oh, maybe I should start some of my homework. It was just, all over the place.
Time felt a bit faster than normal. I didn't have to wait 30 minutes for a train or didn't have to wait for a bus.
Quarantine was a bubble of its own, and the rest of the year was separate to it, so 2020 was both long and short. During the lockdown, I missed the physical interaction with my friends, but I actually took 1 hour or 2 hour long walks every day, just calling them on the phone about random things. So I feel I actually became more connected to some of them.
I missed my friends so much. We were a group, my friends at school were a group that always caught up at lunchtime, like everyone does, catches up at lunchtime and, you know, just chats about everything. But another thing that happened with my group is that unless you're there physically, they don't actually talk to you online. So I had the issue of just feeling like I was so alone.
Definitely the human interaction was like, you normally go out with your friends and, you know, you like, I don't know, watch movies together or like you eat together. But now it's just more like you're like FaceTiming them and it's not really the same.
Definitely missed being around people, especially my mates.
So you got to see them on the Zooms occasionally, but I love physical contact with people and FaceTimes are just not the same.
All my friends are online. I call them. That's how I communicate with people. I don't go out at all. So it was pretty normal for me. I was still getting the socializing that I was still sociable in the way that I needed to be.
It was a bit challenging because I'm not the type to really contact my friends too much on social media or online. I always rely on seeing them at school every day. It was just so easy.
Yes, I miss my friends during lockdown. You know, I still kept in contact with them through social media, but it definitely wasn't the same as it used to be.
The friends I kept in contact with, we would regularly FaceTime, to be honest, I had a lot of friends too who did the same subjects as me, so we would just talk about what we needed to do. Like drama for me, I had a really small class.
Sort of to keep in touch with my friends, we sort of made sure we held sort of daily study sessions online together and make sure we were catching up, but maybe not doing as much work as we should do.
During lockdown, there was a lot of emails being passed between teachers and we were able to organise individual interviews and extra video lessons really easily, so I was quite in touch with my teachers.
If I need any help, maybe I'll just put it on the classroom page, see if anyone can help me and not just the teacher. But the teachers via email was probably the main source for me.
Keeping in contact with teachers was most part easy. Some of them didn't really understand the technology, so it could be hard at times to get in contact with them.
I would use FaceTime, Zoom, Instagram, social media platforms.
We did some video chats and, you know, I just texted my close friends. We made sure to organise a lot of social events after lockdown sort of ended, or at least relaxed.
Sound, which is a bit weird for me because I like being alone and so I like the quiet, but I think after a long time of just silence, I was starting to miss the stimulation of sound from the outside world.
Being able to talk with my friends and, you know, be physically at school, that usually puts me in a good mindset for learning.
I think I missed a normal routine. You kind of had to come up with this new COVID style routine and it felt really artificial and like we were just robots.
The thing I missed the most was my mates, definitely. There's nothing else.
I missed having something to look forward to. We just have weeks at a time, not knowing when lockdown was going to end, when COVID would be over, that we had nothing fun to look forward to. We didn't even know if we were going to be able to have a graduation.
I missed coming into school, which I never thought I would actually miss in lockdown. I missed seeing my friends daily. I missed just having a bit more of a life, I guess, than just staying in my room.
During the restrictions, I missed weekend sport. Not being able to play soccer and basketball with my mates and my team in general upset me quite a bit because I love my footy and basketball.
During the lockdown, I probably missed sort of your daily interactions that you don't really realise until they're not there anymore. Just being able to go and actually hug your friends, not being 1.5 metres away from them.
My artwork Remnants is about moving on, but more importantly, the things we leave behind, even if you may not realise that they're still there. One of the driving forces behind my artwork was a personal question of mine of what happens to the arms and legs of ancient Greek marble sculptures once they're found and fallen off. Those molecules are still there, albeit dust, but they're still existent even though they've been lost in that time, and I was really fascinated by that question. I want people to get from my artwork a reflection of what is it that they have also left behind as they've moved on but not realised.
My artwork, Manifesting Alone, is about living by yourself because I had an experience of moving out of home when I was quite young. And in this artwork, I just wanted to capture the kind of mind space I was in, having to look after myself and all these challenges. In my photographs, you can kind of see it's definitely through an idea of reflection. That's why I've used mirrors and lighting, because I really want the audience to understand that, you know, it is difficult moving out of home. Everyone experiences that at one point. I just want audiences to kind of empathize with the way I felt when living in these situations. And I guess what's good about COVID and the subject matter of my artwork is that the main idea is being alone, and that's definitely shown throughout my artworks. And I think a lot of people, they might not take it away as a, you know, moving out of home and feeling alone or something like that. It might just be being by yourself in lockdown. It also can be portrayed like that. That my artwork can have many different, I guess, opportunities for people to see and understand.
This work is very personal to me. So it's trying to show the contrast between sort of the light and the dark and what we have to recognise and what we are willing to recognise. I think that's shown by, I have a very bright side of the work and the other side is very dark, and sort of this hidden history that has, you know, this big crack through it, like it needs to be broken apart, it needs to be uncovered, and that sort of ties into these poles that I use in my work that sort of tie the work to the actual land to sort of demonstrate how much this history of the First Nation people is really related to land, and how we just need to take their practices into our own daily lives and then sort of remake our understanding of their history.
Well, Behind the Door is about domestic violence and what you can't see. And so it means that whatever's happening at home, people the outsiders don't know what's going on inside. And so that I wanted to portray that through my artwork, through like the different sort of images and quotes. I want the audience to take in consideration about what's actually happening at home and not second guessing themselves and actually approaching the person, whether they're getting abused at home or not, because I feel like it's really important to not only the victim to speak out about it, but other people to maybe just to ask them and see if they're okay.
So, Reaching Utopia is a storyboard about a young girl that has mental illness who, through her dreams actually, she uses it as a coping mechanism, so escapism essentially. So every night she goes off into her dream world, she meets a comforting presence who kind of guides her out of her despair and depression. And then it's a pretty dark story actually. Towards the end, there are some notions of death. It's pretty dark. I want the audience to look at my work and on first impression think, oh wow, it's so innocent and so, maybe the art style is so pretty or cute or something like that. But the more they look into it, the darker it gets.
First of the Roll is about, it's like based on the first shot of it's a 35mm cameras, and the first shot of each roll of film you'd get a interesting burn effect, which most times was just a shot that a photographer would use to make sure the film was loaded. Quite often it just gets thrown away or not used. I had I think 2 or 3 shots that I had never meant to use. I took one inside, which I wouldn't have normally done. It was just to make sure the film had loaded. And I was like, oh, that's actually quite a nice shot. And I looked at a couple others and they were all fairly decent shots. No post-editing, just because I wanted that authentic film look and I didn't want to change anything about it. I'd like the audience to appreciate how you don't, just because a shot would be considered a throwaway by you or someone else, doesn't mean that it can't be used. And even I guess, be a bit curious about what it could have been if there wasn't the burnt effect at the bottom.
So my work, Chrysalis, I guess I tried to capture this psychological experience between being really young to becoming an adult and forming your own ideas about the world. And so I kind of tried to capture that through my little sister. I kind of want the audience to really think about forming their own opinions about the world and understanding that it comes from within themselves.
My body of work, the Unpredictable Year, is a series of photos that are supposed to represent like different emotions and feelings in general of the ones that I felt throughout the year itself, from the bushfires and the COVID-19 and the loss of security, life and income in general. I wanted to try to find things that related to emotions and stuff many people would have felt during that time. The cupboard photo, I kind of just opened up the door one day and I realised it was like really messy. So I had the idea that it would resemble kind of my mind and the way how I was feeling at that point in time. I was trying to go for like the deadpan aesthetic for things that are just boring or neutral, and I tried to capture it in a way that could make it not be seen as like an object but be seen as something more than what its purpose is. I want the audience to feel a sense of ease, meaning that like try not to worry about things that have happened in the past and not worrying about the future, but try to be just in the present, looking at the different photos. I want them to just feel present.
Welcome to Suburbia is about looking at the everyday moments we have in life. These things that are so familiar to us, our houses, we kind of overlook and forget to see the beauty in them. I wanted to show the reader that they're actually deeply tied to our identity, and I also wanted to sort of explore nostalgia in this familiarity to our houses and suburbia that we know of. I want the audience to see my work and appreciate these scenes a bit more and use them to reflect on life and the beauty that they contain.
My artwork's sort of about human emotion and how people have an emotional response to different colours and sort of textures that are brought out through, the art style that I've chosen, which is drawing. It's really about how the audience responds to each of the works in their own individual way. The title of my work is Our Hands Tell Our Story. There's a saying that by looking at someone's hands, you can really see, how their life's been, and I think it was really important to me to show someone's story and emotion and meaning through their hands. I really don't want to say explicitly what my artwork is about because I want people to be able to interpret it in their own way. But I just want people to look at my artwork and see if they can understand the story of the hands that are there.
So my artwork, Breathe, is a short video featuring an array of images and sounds and colours, and I wanted to portray the idea of chromesthesia and synesthesia because they are things that I experienced during like anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and I wanted to bring forth the idea of like understanding, because there's a big gap I think between people who know what these things are but don't exactly understand it or can't empathize with it. So I kind of wanted to like close that gap. I'd like people to take the video for what it is and experience it, interpret how they want, but also pay attention to how they feel while watching it.